So glad to have you back. It's been a while since our last chapter, our last lesson, so I'm sure you've missed my voice, but don't worry, we're ready to go. So today's goal is to learn to write ratios, rates, and find out what unit rates are. Make sure you have this goal written down along with today's date and page number. Seriously, make sure you have this goal written down along with today's date and page number. All right. So you got 4 fractions that I want you to put in simplest form. Once you do so, come on back. So here are the results of the 4 warm-up problems. I even put in red what I found as the greatest common factor I could divide the numerator and denominator by. So good review of fractions. Cool. All right, let's get into our new knowledge for today. We are going to be looking at a lesson that has 3 different examples. So get ready for 3 different things for today. So here's the kind of stuff we're going to be dealing with. It says, for a time, a local symphony orchestra was made up of 95 musicians. Here's a picture that came from the book. So these are the breakdowns of it: 29 violins, cellos, and so on and so forth. So to be able to compare the different groups, we use a ratio. And this is the first note I want you to put down for this unit. First vocabulary word, a ratio. A ratio is a comparison of 2 quantities using division. So that's what we're going to be working with, is the division operation. We're going to be dealing a lot with fractions as well, so be ready for that. So ratio is a comparison of 2 quantities using division. Trying to find the ratio. Have that written down. You don't have to put anything else but what's in the bracket before moving on. All right, so here's an example. Now, if we were looking at the difference or the ratio to compare the number of violins, it was 29, and violas, which were 12, you would write a ratio. So basically what you do is you take the 2 terms, and in this case, the 2 terms we had were violins, or 29, and violas are 12. And because we're looking at violins to violas, the first number is going to be a 29, and the second number is a 12. So the 3 ways that you can write them, the first is like a fraction, 29 to 12. The second is writing the numbers with the word 2 in between. And the third one is using a colon. 29 is to 12, but all of them mean 2. Okay? So all of them are in order of importance. So what I want you to do is make sure you have down this example of 3 different ways you can write a ratio. And just understand that ratios can be written to compare a part to a part to a whole, or a whole to part. So that means if we're looking at these are part-to-part problems, okay? Because they're part of an orchestra to the other part of the orchestra. Part to whole would be the violins compared to how many people are in the orchestra total. Or whole to part would be the whole orchestra compared to how many trumpets there are. Stuff like that. So have down those couple examples before moving on. Remember, you don't have to write anything else, just those pieces. All right, so we're going to write down our first example here, and it says that we're going to use the table here to look at the animals at the vet. So we're looking at cats, dogs, and rabbits. So the question that we have in this problem says we need to know cats to rabbits. So the 3 different ways to write the ratio is first find out how many cats there are. That's the first number, and then how many rabbits. So in this problem, we're looking at 5 to 2, or 5 to 2, or 5 to 2. I wrote them all down, the 3 different ways. This is an example of what we were looking at in the last slide of part to part. And the reason it's part to part was we're not looking at all the animals, just the small part of cats and the smaller part of rabbits. Okay? Have this down as an example, table and all, before moving on. And because I had you write down the table already, all you have to do is look at the bottom part, and let's make sure we look at this now. So now we're going to look at a part to whole, because we're going to look at the dogs compared to all the pets. So to figure out all the pets, you find the sum of all of them. Add up 7, 5, and 2, you get 14. So we're looking at 7 dogs to a total of 14 pets. So our ratio would be 7 to 14, or 7 to 14, or 7 to 14. Again, this is the most ideal way to write them, since we're so used to seeing stuff like that. Have the bottom down before moving on. And this one you don't have to write down, but I want you to see a whole to part. It's the same thing where you have to add them up, but this time we want to put the whole before the part that we're looking at in this case is the cats. All right, now let's get moving on with our video. Get it? Here's your turn to show me what you can do. So you got 3 different things here, 3 different questions. Remember, you're going to pick which way you want to write the ratios. You don't have to write them 3 different ways, just once. So the first one is music programs to art programs. That's a part to part. Then it's arcade games to the entire collection. That's part to whole. And the entire collection to educational games would be whole to part. Good luck. Now, for instructional purposes only, I wrote them 3 different ways. All are different ways to write a ratio. I just wanted to show you them. So hopefully you got 3 to 10, then 10 to 41, and then 41 to 16. All right, another definition I want you to copy down is equivalent ratios. It's the same as equivalent fractions. So that's why I want you guys to be writing ratios like fractions. The ratios that name the same comparison. So just like finding equivalent fractions, equivalent ratios are the same way. You can find an equivalent ratio by basically multiplying the 2 numbers by an equal value or an equal factor in both terms. Have this written down, and then we'll do some practice with them in the next slide. All right, so here's an example of writing 3 equivalent ratios to compare the number of diamonds to the number of spades. So since the question looks at diamonds first, that's going to be the first thing we look at. So diamonds is number 1, and then spades is number 2. So our diamonds here are green. So we have 1, 2, 3. So that's why we wrote 3 as the first number. And then spades, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our ratio is 3 to 6. That's how that works. Now, if I asked you to find 3 equivalent ratios, it's the same as finding equivalent fractions. So the first thing I notice is 3 and 6, they both share a common factor of 3. So you could divide them by both by 3 and you get 1 to 2. 1 to 2, 1 diamond for every 2 spades. That's called a unit rate because that's looking at what it is with just 1, which is something we're going to learn later. But it's good to point that out. The other way we did it is we just multiplied them both by 3. Why 3? Because you can. So remember, with any of these, all you really have to do is just multiply both numbers by some number, like times 2, times 3, times 4, and so on. Have this written down before moving on. All right, it's your turn now to write 3 equivalent ratios to compare the hearts in the picture to the total number of hearts. So this is a part to whole example. So we're looking at red hearts and total number. So I'll even help you with this. If I write it as a fraction, the red hearts, there's 2 of them. 1, 2. You don't even see the red line I made. And then the total hearts is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So your ratio is 2 to 9. Now, go ahead and make 3 equivalent ratios. Come back when you're done. So I found the easiest way I could possibly do this. I took 2 to 9 and I multiplied it by 2. I got 4 to 18. I multiply it by 3, so 2 times 3 is 6. 9 times 3 is 27. So I always based it on the original ratio. And then times 4, I got 836. So hopefully I have something similar. If your numbers are a little different, you can check with me or see how I score your question in the video. Okay, as I was showing you in the second practice problem, or second example problem, we're going to start looking at rates now. So rates and unit rates are the next 2 vocabulary words that we have. So a rate compares 2 quantities that have different units of measure. So the example we're looking here is soda. Soda in the bottle is a 2-liter bottle. So there's a measurement of mass. And then we have price, which is a measurement of money. They're 2 different things, but we can still look at them as a rate when you're saying for every 2 liters, it costs $1.98. When you try to break it down to figure out what 1 liter is, we call that a unit rate. So when the comparison is to 1 unit, the rate is called a unit rate. So basically what you do is you divide both terms by the second term to find out what you have. So that's something to write down. So here's an example that I want you to write down when trying to figure this out. So we know that a unit rate is for every 2-liter bottle, it's $1.98. But what if we wanted to buy a 1-liter bottle and see if we're getting a good deal? What you do is you're going to divide like a fraction. you're going to divide that bottom number into the top number. Well, 2 divided by 2, that becomes 1. And 2 divided by $1.98 comes out to be 99 cents. So your unit rate, this over here, this final thing is the unit rate. It says that for every 1 liter of soda, it's going to be 99 cents. You always try when you're comparing things with math to find a unit rate so you know what your lowest term is going to be, and then you can figure it out from there. Have this written down before moving on. I know it's a lot. Take your time. All right, so here we're looking at a comparison with the unit rate to see what one is going to give you the better deal. So first it tells us that for 3 rolls of paper towels, it costs $2.79. And for a 6-pack of rolls, it costs $5.46. So which one is actually cheaper? Well, to figure this out, you got to figure out what it's worth for 1 roll. So again, with our one on the left here, we notice that we're looking at 3 rolls. So that's the number we're going to divide both by. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and that's what we want. We want that second term to be a 1. 3 goes into $2.79 93 times. So for a 3-pack of towels, it's 93 cents for each roll. Now for the other one, we're looking at dividing by 6, since that's the unit on the bottom. 6 divided by 6 gives us exactly what we want, 1 roll. So how many times does 6 go into $5.46? That's 91 cents. So actually buying the 6-pack is going to be the better deal because you spend 2 cents less per paper towel roll than the other brand. So write this down as an example so you can see how to do it, because next you're going to be doing 2 of them on your own. All right, so we have 2 problems here. I'm going to have you do number 5 only, the top one. The bottom one is going to be there if we want extra practice later. We can sit down together or as a small little group and try to solve that one. Go ahead and do number 5. You're looking at 8-ounce bags of sunflower seeds. They're $1.68, or a 4-ounce bag of sunflower seeds being 88. So divide them out, figure out what the best unit rate deal is. Come back when you're done. All right, so here's the work I found. When I divided the 8-ounce bag by 8, I found out that each ounce of sunflower seeds is 21 cents. The 4-ounce bag, when I divided that out by the ounces, was 22 cents. So what's the better deal? Buying the 8-ounce bag in this case is the better deal. So that's why I circled that one. All right, 2 box of thought questions I want you to think about and get back to me in your notebook your best answers. And here's your quiz. You got 4 problems, and it looks like the first 3 are going to use the table on the right. Okay, we'll see you next time. Good job today.